All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time, we're tackling something I think we're all pretty familiar with:
Oh, yeah,
time management.
for sure.
Specifically, we dove into this really insightful conversation between a couple of podcast hosts about how to manage time better.
Right. And what was really interesting is they started by talking about how time is different from any other resource.
Okay. In what way?
Well, like you think about it, I might get stressed if we spend a few extra dollars,
Right.
but then we just let hours slip away.
Yeah, totally guilty of that.
No, me too.
How is it that we undervalue time so much?
Yeah, they made this really interesting analogy comparing time to money or possessions.
Okay.
Those are things we can usually get back or replace
Yeah.
time, though.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah, you can't earn more time.
Exactly. Once it's gone, it's gone. There's no going back.
It's like every day I feel like I'm saying to myself, where did the day go?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like it just constantly slips through your fingers.
And that feeling is actually they connect that
Yeah.
to needing good time management skills.
Okay.
Because if you don't actively manage your time, it's going to manage you.
Yeah.
And that's how you end up feeling overwhelmed all the time.
Right, right. And you just wonder where all the hours went.
Exactly. And so
Okay.
they actually referenced a Harvard study that found this link between time management and happiness.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about getting things done. It's like it affects how you feel overall.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about that sense of control
Okay.
that you get from managing your time well.
Oh, that makes sense.
And just that feeling of accomplishment that you have after a really productive day.
Right, because when you're productive, you just feel like you've achieved something.
Right, exactly.
You're like,
yeah.
yes, I did that thing.
And that satisfaction comes from aligning your actions with your purpose.
Okay.
And that's actually a big part of their whole conversation.
So instead of just trying to do everything, it's like figuring out what is actually important to you.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's your career, your relationships, personal growth, all of that.
No.
Having that clear sense of purpose, it's like this filter for your time.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like a compass that guides you through all the chaos.
But with a compass, you can still get lost, right?
Oh, for sure. And actually, especially nowadays.
Right.
Distractions are everywhere.
Yeah.
Feels like we're constantly bombarded with distractions.
Okay, so beyond the obvious ones like social media and the constant notifications.
Right.
What else did they pinpoint as a distraction?
Well, they talk about procrastination,
Of course.
which, we all know procrastination is a huge time waster.
Yeah.
But they also talk about something less obvious.
Like that.
Saying yes to things that don't actually align with your goals.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's so easy to feel obligated to say yes to things,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't really resonate with what you're trying to achieve.
Right, right. Because we don't want to let people down.
Exactly. But all of those little yeses, they really add up.
Yeah, I can see that.
And they can pull you away from what really matters.
Right, so it's these hidden time thieves, basically.
Oh, really?
Stealing away our most valuable resource.
Exactly.
So we have this constant battle against these distractions. And without that sense of purpose, it's just so easy to get pulled in a million different directions.
Mm-hmm.
What did these hosts suggest we do about it?
Well, one of their key recommendations was actually mindfulness,
Okay.
specifically learning to be present in the moment.
I've heard so much about mindfulness, but
Yeah.
how does that actually help us manage time better?
Well, it's not about ignoring the future.
Right.
It's about savoring the now while still planning for tomorrow.
Okay.
Think about how much time we spend just worrying
Oh, yeah.
about things that we can't control or dwelling on the past.
Yeah, a lot, actually.
Right. And being present actually lets you break free from that cycle.
Oh, I see.
And you can fully experience your life.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And they actually connected being present back to that feeling of fulfillment that we talked about earlier.
Right.
When you're really engaged in the present moment, you're much more likely to find joy
Yeah.
in even simple things.
So it's not about cramming in as much as possible. It's
Yeah.
about experiencing time
Exactly.
in a deeper way.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding joy in the process.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And actually, they went through some key vocabulary.
Oh, yeah. I noticed they kept coming back to certain words.
Yeah, they did.
What about prioritize? How did they define that?
So they defined prioritizing as the act of deciding what's most important
Okay.
and then tackling those things first.
All right. So if you have a mountain of tasks,
Right.
prioritizing helps you figure out what to focus on first.
Yeah. And it's about making conscious choices about where to focus your energy.
That makes sense. What about productivity? Did they have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so they described it as being able to get a lot done
Mm.
in a certain amount of time.
Oh, okay, but that's hard when you have distractions, right?
Oh, totally. And so that leads right into their definition of distractions,
Yeah, okay.
which is anything that pulls your attention away from what you're supposed to be doing.
Okay.
And so these distractions can be external.
Okay, so like a noisy environment?
Yeah, exactly. Or like social media.
Yeah, social media is a big one.
Right. But then it can also be internal,
Internal. Okay, like what?
like those random thoughts that pop into your head.
Right.
Or procrastination.
Okay, I see.
Like anything that makes you lose focus.
That makes sense. And then so to combat those distractions, they talked about having a schedule.
Yeah, they defined it as a plan that outlines when certain things will happen
Okay.
and a well-structured schedule.
Right.
It really helps allocate your time for different tasks.
So you're not just all over the place.
Exactly. And you won't feel so overwhelmed.
It's like a roadmap for your day.
Totally. And finally, they talked about balance.
Okay. And what was their take on that?
So they defined it as finding that like equilibrium between different parts of your life.
Okay.
Like we can't pour all of our time and energy into one area and neglect the others.
Right. It's like the classic work-life balance thing.
Yeah.
Making sure you have time for work and relationships
Right.
and like personal things too,
Right.
even just
So-
time to relax.
And they think that finding that balance is really crucial for living a good life.
It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So before we move on and actually get into the strategies they talk about, I'm curious what resonated with you the most from this first part of our deep dive.
Oh, that's a good question.
What's sticking out in your mind in terms of like how you manage your own time? Or even just how you think about time?
It's crazy how just having those vocabulary terms like reframes your whole perspective.
Yeah, it's like they gave us a new language to think about it all.
Totally.
Okay, so now that we have the language, what about putting it into action?
Yeah. Did any of those practical tips that they talked about stand out to you?
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
What really intrigued me was they talked about setting realistic goals.
Right.
And so they suggest like focusing on maybe just one or two key tasks each day
Okay.
instead of trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, the less is more approach.
Right.
I mean, that's time management 101,
It makes sense.
you know? And when we break down those bigger goals into those smaller steps,
Right.
it just makes it way less overwhelming.
Right. And then you feel like you're actually accomplishing something.
Yeah, it creates that positive feedback loop.
Yeah, totally.
And it encourages you to keep going.
It's like, how do you eat an elephant?
Oh,
One bite at a time.
ha ha ha. I like that.
So they also talked about this thing called time blocking,
Oh, yeah.
which I have to admit I've never really tried before.
So time blocking is where you basically schedule blocks of time for different activities.
Right.
So you're basically looking at your day like a visual calendar.
Okay.
Each block is dedicated to a certain task.
So like maybe an hour in the morning for focused work
Yeah, exactly.
and then like 30 minutes to check email?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And then maybe an hour for a creative project or
So
something.
like almost like you're putting up these fences
Yeah, totally.
to protect your time from distractions.
Exactly. And that's like the main benefit of it.
Okay.
Because you've already decided how you're going to spend your time.
Yeah.
You're much less likely to get sidetracked.
Right. Because you're not just like winging it.
Exactly.
So did they give any like specific tips on how to actually make this work?
Yeah. So the big thing is to be realistic with your time estimates.
Okay.
Like it's better to overestimate than underestimate.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because if you underestimate, then you end up feeling rushed.
Right.
And then, if something comes up,
Yeah.
be flexible. Adjust your schedule if you need to.
So it's more like guidelines than actual rules.
Exactly.
You're working with your schedule,
Yeah.
not against it.
For sure.
They also talked about learning to say no,
Oh, yeah. The power of no.
which I think can be really hard,
Oh, absolutely.
especially if you're someone who likes to please people.
Yes. But they tied that back to having that sense of purpose that we talked about.
Okay.
Like when you know what truly matters to you,
Right.
it's way easier to be picky about what you commit to.
So it's not about being selfish.
Right.
It's more about protecting your time so
Exactly.
you can focus on your goals.
Right. And, sometimes saying no
Yeah.
can actually be the best thing for you
Okay. Interesting.
and for the people you're saying no to,
I like that perspective.
because it allows you to show up fully for the things that you do say yes to.
Right.
You're not spreading yourself too thin.
It's like that whole oxygen mask analogy on a plane.
Oh, yeah.
You got to put your own mask on first.
Right.
And in this case, saying no is putting on your oxygen mask.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
So another thing they talked about was taking breaks,
Yes.
which I think is interesting because at first it seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, you'd think to make the most of your time,
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to take breaks.
You just keep going.
Exactly. But actually, breaks are super important
Okay.
to stay focused and productive.
Why is that?
Because when you just keep going without taking any breaks,
Yeah.
you actually burn out.
Okay.
Your performance declines. Your creativity suffers.
Interesting.
You make more mistakes.
So it's like the opposite of what you want to happen.
Exactly. And they compare your brain to like a muscle.
Okay.
It needs time to rest and recharge.
So what kind of breaks are we talking about here?
So they recommend stepping away from your workspace, maybe going for a walk,
Okay.
listening to music, meditating,
Okay.
talking to a colleague, anything to kind of de-stress.
So it's about like shifting gears.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then the last tip that they talked about was reflection.
Right. Reflection is so important.
In what way?
It's where you kind of connect the dots.
Okay.
You figure out what's working and what's not working.
So it's about asking yourself the hard questions.
Yeah, like, am I actually using my time in a way that makes sense? Right. You know, am I managing distractions? Am I taking care of myself?
Like checking in with your compass.
Exactly. And by being honest with yourself about those questions,
Yeah.
you can figure out where you need to make changes.
Right. So it's this constant process.
Yeah, time management isn't just like a one-time fix.
It's like this ongoing thing.
Yeah, it's constantly evolving.
That makes sense.
And that's what's cool about it.
Yeah.
There's no right way to do it.
Everyone's different.
Exactly. It's all about finding what works for you.
What I really liked about this conversation was how they tied it back to living a more meaningful life.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That was so powerful.
It's not just about productivity.
Right.
It's about creating a life that you actually enjoy.
Yeah, a life that like reflects your values.
Exactly.
It's about being intentional with your time.
Yeah.
You're choosing to spend it on things that bring you joy.
And purpose.
Right. And when you can actually manage your time well,
Yeah.
it creates space for all of those things.
Right.
You're less stressed, you're less rushed.
You're more at peace.
Exactly.
It's like you're reclaiming your time so that you can really live.
Yeah.
Not just exist, but live.
Beautifully put. And that actually leads us to a really important question
Okay.
for all of you listening. What does a meaningful life look like for you?
That's such a good question.
Yeah. And what are the things that bring you joy and purpose?
And a sense of accomplishment.
Right.
I think it's a great question to think about.
Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of us, those answers change over time.
Oh, for sure.
As we grow and our priorities shift.
Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, life is all about change. It's constantly evolving.
Yeah, totally.
The important thing is that you're like checking in with yourself
Yeah.
to make sure that what you're doing still aligns with what's important to you.
It's like revisiting that compass,
Exactly.
making sure you're still on track. And if you're not,
Yeah.
you can always course correct.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have the power to change.
And I think that brings us back to that Harvard study we talked about earlier.
Right.
You know, the people who felt happier and more fulfilled, they weren't just good at managing their time. They were actively choosing
Right.
how they were spending it.
Yeah. They were calling the shots.
So it's not about just checking things off a to-do list.
Right.
It's about making sure that what you're doing actually aligns with your values.
And that's what allows you to create a life that you actually enjoy.
Yeah, a life that feels good.
Exactly.
So it's really about being intentional with our time.
Yes, very much so.
And treating it as the precious resource that it is.
And I think that that's like the biggest takeaway from this whole conversation. Like, they're giving us permission to slow down
I like that.
and be more mindful.
So how do we actually do that?
Well, I have a challenge for you.
Okay, I like challenges.
Okay, so for the next week, what if you treated your time as if it was the most valuable thing you have?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what would that look like?
Yeah. What kinds of choices would you make?
Exactly. Like, if your time was truly precious,
Yeah.
how would you spend it?
And it doesn't have to be like these huge, drastic changes.
Yeah.
It could be something small.
Yeah, maybe you say no to something that you don't really want to do.
Okay.
Or you carve out 30 minutes to do something you actually enjoy.
Yeah. Even those little things can make a big difference.
They really can. It sets the tone.
You're sending a message.
To yourself and to the universe.
Yeah.
That your time matters.
And that you're ready to take control.
Exactly.
All right, so that wraps up our deep dive into the world of time management.
Yeah,
I hope this conversation has given you some things to think about
definitely.
and maybe even inspired you to try some of these strategies in your own life.
Yeah, and remember, time is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to us to decide what we do with it.
So be present, be intentional.
And make every moment count.
Until next time.